Rydall here, founder of the Law of Emergence and author of the best-selling books Emergence and the Abundance Project. And I'm talking today about this very controversial topic, really, especially now, but really always, which is that responsibility is hard, but being a victim is much harder. And what I mean by that is, as easy as it might, or as relieving as it might seem, to feel victimized and justified in your victimhood and justified in your blaming or complaining or attacking the other, the condition, the person, the institution, whatever, it's actually much, much more difficult, much, much more painful to take a victim perspective than it is to take full responsibility. Now, why is that so controversial? And I mean it both two ways. I'm going to answer why, but also why in the world is that controversial? And we see increasingly in our society a polarization between the victims and the victimizers. We see it in the Me Too movement. We see it with the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's always been there to some extent, but it's becoming institutionalized. This idea that you are justified, and if anybody speaks and tries to talk to people that feel victimized to help them reclaim their power, you are seen as part of the victimizers or the perpetrators. And especially if you're a white person, or if you're a male, or if you're quote unquote privileged, or whatever the categories are, right? White, male, privileged, at least in the West. In other countries and other times in history, it wasn't always the white person, it wasn't always the male, and it wasn't always the quote unquote privileged. It was the person with the most power, or the army, or just the courage. So it's evolved over time. But the reason I want to talk about this, I was just looking at a post by one of my mentors who I know very, very well and know where he's coming from. And was talking about responsibility versus victimhood, and he was getting attacked. And we see this happening, in the media, and we see this happening now in the colleges, that people are being indoctrinated into a mindset of, microaggressions and safe spaces and safe zones. And while in the moment it feels relieving to not have to have an opinion that stirs you up, or hear somebody else's perspective that hurts your feelings, it feels like a relief in the moment. Just like it's a relief when you don't have to go to the gym, even though you know you need to, or you don't have to go jog today, or it's a relief that you don't have to sit down and do the hard work in front of you. It's a temporary relief to be freed from what hurts your feelings, what stirs you up, what challenges you. As a strategy for life, as a strategy for evolution and progress, it is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for building a society of fragile, you hear the term snowflakes, and that's a derogatory term, but I want to speak very rationally about this. It's a recipe for developing fragile people, for making you non-resilient, for making you weaker, for giving you less capacity to deal with the vicissitudes of life. It's a terrible, terrible recipe. And any psychologist worth their merit would tell you so. Scientifically, we know from immunity, if you keep your kids away from the dirt, away from the rain, away from the weather, their immunity system is weak and they are going to get sick more often. If you avoid the gym and the working out of muscles and the tearing of your muscles and the pain and the recovery that requires, your muscles atrophy, you get weaker. If you are always protected from the different types of people and the different perspectives, and you are kept in a safe little bubble of schooling or whatever the case may be, you grow up, and when you finally have to confront the different people and the different perspectives, and you're not so much all that anymore, it can be destructive and ultimately debilitating to the individual. So across all spectrums, if we're not exposed to the challenges, to the different perspectives, to the things that annoy us, that hurt our feelings, that tear our muscles, that stretch and challenge and really stir us up, we become weak, we become fragile, we become non-resilient, and we become those in the natural selection aspect of reality that die, that do not go on, that do not pass on their genes from an evolutionary perspective. Nevertheless, we are developing in society almost as a religion the idea that the victim is always right, and appease the victim, and don't say anything against a victim. And if you have a challenging perspective, even if you bring science or logic or data or even compassion, if it doesn't agree with the victim, you're part of the victimizers. Now, I'm saying all this I didn't mean to get so political right out of the gate. I'm saying this from a very uh, personal perspective, because I also really understand how difficult, how freaking difficult it is when you're in a state of feeling victimized to pull yourself out of it. I have tremendous, tremendous compassion, having gone through the hardest year of my life. And I've been through some very difficult times in my life in general. But I lost my son this last year. And he is and was the love of my life and the light of my life, and was a young man with so much hope and promise. And it shattered me. And it's still shattering me on a daily basis. It's breaking my heart every day. And I had to make major pivots in my business. And I had a lot of partners bail on me and all kinds of challenges financially and otherwise that I had to approach and address. And with the work that I do and the tools that I bring, I've been able to make myself stronger in a lot of ways. However, I'm not through it all the way. And I've noticed over the last few months a whole new resurgence of feeling a victim of life, a victim of circumstances, feeling sorry for myself, feeling pity, feeling like I don't even have it in me to keep holding myself up on my bootstraps and doing another affirmation or meditation or prayer. It's like I'm walking through molasses, or even worse, I'm walking through cement, wet cement that is drying all around me, and I can't get out of it fast enough. So I really understand what it feels like to be a victim now, and to feel victimized. Now, of course, some people might say, who do you think you are as a white man, privileged white man, to think you know what it means to be victimized? And I want to speak to this because it's true that historically speaking, perhaps European white people and European white males have had more privilege. But this is the same mistake that we make when we say all women or all black people or all people of color or all people of whatever are victims, because it's not a monolith. And we all have our own cross to bear. We all, white, black, red, yellow, male, female, gay, straight, that does not determine that you win the contest of suffering, right? It's like we're in a contest, who's the biggest victim? And that does not determine that. I know lots and lots and lots of white people who have gone through more suffering than any of my black friends or gay friends or transgender friends or whatever. And I know lots of gay people. My son was gay, my daughter's gay, I have a gay family, who have had way less suffering and way less challenges. Now, again, I know historically that this is true. There are certain classes of people that have been victimized overall. But do we want to have anybody be a monolith? That's just bigotry in reverse. And it misses the human being at the core. That as human beings, we're all struggling. And we've all been victimized, and we're all victimized by the beliefs of humanity, by the beliefs of separation. Taking responsibility for our life, full responsibility, is really difficult. But living as a victim is much, much harder. And that I've gone through my own journey, having lost my son and having gone through a lot of challenges, where I have every good reason to be depressed, to feel bad about my life, to feel bad about my son's life, to feel like it's not fair, and what led to his death, and just all the challenges that have been heaped on me over the last couple of years or so, and especially this last year. And many of us can feel that way, especially over the last year. And the point I'm trying to make is that I really, really understand how difficult it is when you've been victimized by society, by institutions, by other people, but that we're all victimized by beliefs. And the victimizers are even victimized by the beliefs that have programmed them to become victimizers themselves, to become perpetrators. We're all in it together. And that I've grown, though, in a depth of compassion for people that are suffering from feeling like a victim, because even me, with 25 years of tools and meditation and all the work I've done, of late, I've had to pull myself out of that molasses, out of that drying cement, almost on a daily basis. But it shows me, and it reminds me that no matter how hard things get, no matter how bad life may seem, when you face tragedy, that you still have within you the capacity to pull yourself up, to pull yourself out. And it has everything to do with what you decide to focus on. And again, I'm not saying it's easy. It's extremely difficult. It's depending on the challenge. Now, if you feel like a victim because Starbucks ran out of lattes or whatever, or your Starbucks closed, maybe you don't have much of an argument here. But we've all gone through a lot of challenges and suffering over the years. And if you're a person of color, there's an additional layer of challenge you face, or a woman in some cases, or gay or transgender, or with a disability. There's different layers and different kinds of challenges. But what I want to emphasize is that merely taking the stance of a victim and making a condition or an institution or a person or another race, color, creed, gender the cause of your victimhood is a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for more victimhood. It's a recipe for becoming non-resilient and becoming fragile. And it's absolutely in opposition of your true nature and therefore of life itself. You were designed to be able to do hard, to be able to face crisis and challenge, and as a result become anti-fragile. Other than like a glass where you drop it and you give it a hard time, it'll shatter. It is fragile. Or you have a piece of rubber that you can bang it and it won't break. So it's not fragile, but you are anti-fragile, meaning as you are willing to lift those weights and tear those muscles, as you are willing to be annoyed and have your feelings hurt and have people not like you or not agree with you, but do the deep work to build a greater sense of resilience, to really embrace all of your judgments so that you become free, to tap into the source of your true nature and being and realize that you, no matter what condition you're in, can focus on even the little tiniest bit of good and nourish yourself and get stronger, and therefore be an instrument of such great capacity and ultimate character. When you must realize that this is true about you, or you will forever be a victim and you will never be able to fulfill your potential. And I don't care what color, race, creed, religion, sexual preference, culture, or country you live in, it's a principle. And it doesn't matter if the one delivering this message to you is a white man. It's a principle. And we must become people of courage to speak and live in principle and to speak the truth no matter the cost. And as I watch this increasing society of polarization, of victimhood, and all of this, I see an evolutionary trend that is disastrous to us as a race. And when I see the young people coming out of colleges and being indoctrinated into this idea, I see a recipe for a disastrous future. And there's no wonder why the suicide rates are up. No wonder why the anxiety rates are through the roof for young people and for all people. It's because they haven't built the resilience. And if we're going to make it through these challenging times, and not merely survive, but thrive and be stronger and bigger, more loving, more compassionate, more generous, have more capacity for creativity and innovation and inspiration and progress, we must get this piece that nobody is ultimately a victim. Now, that doesn't mean there are not issues we need to address, that there's not racism and bigotry and misogyny and all these things that need to be addressed. And that does not mean that you may not have been a victim of that. You might have been. And you might be in the future. That is beside the point of this principle. If you want to survive that and thrive through that and live the life you desire, regardless of that, not merely despite it, but even because of it, you must realize this principle, that even though you may seemingly be victimized in a moment, you are not and you are never a victim. Even though we are all victimized by these viruses of fear and limitation and separation, fundamentally we are not victims, and we can immunize and inoculate ourselves against these viruses of fear, lack, limitation, and separation. We can. Even while they're bombarding us and beating the crap out of us right now, we still have within us the strength and the courage and the capacity and the character to become strong enough. And I understand how it feels temporarily relieving to have a story of blame, to make it somebody else's fault. It's the big business's fault. It's the government's fault. It's men's fault. It's the white people's fault. It's Trump's fault. It's Obama's fault. It's the Democrats. It's the Republicans. But what I'm saying, what I hope you hear, is none of that is going to help you. And it's not mutually exclusive from the work we need to do to improve the structures of our society and of our own life. It doesn't mean we lack compassion for ourselves and those parts of us that are angry and scared and hurting. In fact, we must develop greater compassion for those parts of us. And then we'll have greater compassion for those that are still stuck, not only in their victimhood, but in their victimizer space. We can love our enemy and realize the enemy is in our own household. And it's really hard. I want us to become mature enough to hold a conversation with nuance, to recognize that it's really not black or white. It's really not these people are bad and these people are good. This point of view bad, this point of view good. We must grow up, people. As I've been saying lately, politically speaking, you can't fly without a left and a right wing. Okay? You can't thrive as a woman or as a man without fully embracing the masculine and the feminine. You can't create a world of abundance and good for all without meeting the chaos as well as the order. You cannot create a world that works for the highest good of all if you are trying to create safe spaces and you are trying to make it a world that is completely sterilized from anything that's going to upset you or stir you up or piss you off or scare the crap out of you. It doesn't work. The truth will set you free. But at first, it's going to scare the crap out of you, and it's going to piss you off, and it's going to annihilate parts of you. But if you're willing to die daily to the parts of you that are not serving, that are not true, and be a constant space of availability to a truth that's bigger than you, a truth that is not mine or yours, but is somewhere in the middle, evolution will happen. Progress will happen. New growth will happen. A life and a world that works for all will be possible. But we, as Mae West said, those who are offended easily need to be offended more often. And those that are going to be change makers, thought leaders, or leaders at all in this world, and you are all a leader of your own life or your family, you must have the courage to offend. You must have the courage to offend. To live and speak the truth as best as you can in service of the highest good, no matter the cost. Sometimes you're there to comfort the afflicted, but sometimes you're there to afflict the comfortable. And you must have the courage first to inflict your comfortableness,
right? We got to tell the truth to ourselves first. And that takes a practice. That takes a willingness to be self-reflective. That takes a willingness to pray the prayer, let me see what I've been unwilling to see. Let me hear what I've been unwilling to hear. Let me feel what I've been unwilling to feel. And there's only one fear, and that's a fear of feeling. That prayer is the prayer of the real thought leader, the real courageous individual, the real spiritual warrior is the one that's willing to hear and feel and become aware of that which they've been protecting themselves from. And there's a truth in there. There's a nugget of truth that when you're willing, all of your answers are there. All of your solutions are there. All that you could ever need and desire to live the life of your dreams and destiny is within you, but you cannot get access to it by merely only wanting to see, feel, hear, and experience that which fits your nice little map of reality or current identity. Because if that was true, you'd already have everything you want. You get it? Your map of reality is limited. Your identity is limited. The way you see yourself in the world is limited. If it wasn't, you would be God. You would be raising the dead and have mountains of every good you could imagine just flowing through you and to you and everyone you touch. Okay? It's limited by definition. And so it serves a purpose in a moment, and then life keeps growing. And if we are going to fight for our right to be right about our limited maps of reality and identities, we're going to die in that fight. And we're going to destroy each other. But if we're willing to be stirred up, offended, to have crisis and challenge, to tear our mental, emotional, and physical muscles in the gym of our life, to be challenged by other people's perspective, to be able to hold two seemingly contradictory ideas in our mind at the same time and not try to cancel that person for that. If we're willing to have that kind of courage, the kind of courage that used to exist, but is so few and far between now, individuals like that now are called, are canceled. They're called Nazis, or they're called whatever, radical left, radical right, pick your side, but they're canceled and they're attacked. And then there's a lot of companies and corporations that don't have any balls. They have no courage. And so they'll fire the person rather than standing up to the mob. So we've got mob mentality. And what I'm inviting you to recognize is, where is that in you? Where are you perpetuating that? Where are you believing in the mob? Where are you going along to get along, or getting along to go along? Where are you actually dropping your sword of truth and raising the white flag in surrender and acting like you're a victim, or seeing others merely as victims? Where are you getting triggered and reactive because of your own trauma and your own wounds, and looking at every time somebody out there does something wrong, that's an opportunity to get revenge for the pain you feel? And where are you supporting people that are doing that? And will you have the courage to take 100% responsibility for your life and for your feelings? Because nobody is making you feel a thing. Nobody. No matter what they call you. Nobody. No matter what they do to you even. Only you can develop those feelings. Only you can activate those feelings. It's hard. It's so hard. But look at Nelson Mandela being in prison for 27 years. And he did this work, and he came out and became the president and ended apartheid. And he began to end it while in prison, while being beat, while being abused, while forgiving his abusers. He came out and he created forgiveness tribunals. Look at Gandhi. Look at Mother Teresa. Look at Jesus. Look at Buddha. Look at the great leaders of our ages. Look at Martin Luther King Jr. Look at these individuals that did not play the victim role. They had compassion for those that were suffering. They spoke truth to pseudo power, but they had the courage to do their own work, and then the courage to speak the truth. And speaking the truth didn't mean attacking and shaming and blaming and canceling people as a way to vent their own bile, their own revenge. They took responsibility. They became resilient through all manner of tragedy and loss and pain. That's the kind of people we need today. Real statesmen and stateswomen, real thought leaders, real change makers. And if you're still listening, that very well could be you. And if it's only in your own family, if it's only with your own children, if it's only changing the legacy of suffering and victimhood in your family and building a new legacy, a new level of resilience and character, that's enough. Generations and generations from you, you will have created a whole new generation of individuals with character who are lights in the world. So yes, it's very, very difficult to take responsibility for our lives, but it's way harder to be a victim. And I'm speaking from current experience, feeling like a victim a lot these days after losing my son and all the pain and suffering and then physical challenges arising, just going through a dark night of the soul, but doing the work. But some days, man, I don't want to get out of bed. Some days, I don't want to pick myself up off the floor. I don't want to hear some bullshit thing, how it's all working together for good. I don't. And still, I come back. Back to my heart, back to the prayer. Use me more than I want to fix, change, heal, control anyone or anything, including myself. I want to know the truth that makes me free. I want to be an instrument of truth and love for the highest good. Even though right now I want to blow up the world, I'm still going to pray this prayer. I'm still going to meditate. I'm still going to do my work. I'm still going to show up and serve. If all I can do is type one word and put one foot in front of the other today, I'm going to still pull myself up out of being a victim. Or at the very least, I'm going to hold that sweet part of me that feels victimized and love him and tell him the truth. Let him cry, let him rage. But I'm not going to keep circulating that energy. We can do this. And if we're willing, together we really can change the collective conversation first. Have the courage to not be cowed by the cancel culture or by any side of the conversation. To be responsible with our words, to be responsible with our consciousness. To not be politically correct, but to tell the truth, to be in the truth, and to be compassionate, and to be patient. And we can change the conversation, and that will change the consciousness of the collective. It doesn't take millions of people. It takes 10 righteous men or women to change a city. So will you answer that call? Comment below, share your thoughts and ideas. Let people, other friends hear this that may be stuck in this conversation. And if you want more, go check out my podcast, Emergence, on iTunes or YouTube, or go to DerekRydall.com and get more free trainings and support. I'm here for you. You're in my heart. And until next time, remember to live authentically, love unconditionally, and follow your destiny. Take care.